Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Wryly, and we have a couple objectives today. We have different things to talk about. First of all, I do want to tell you about the books that I read in June. This is my June wrap-up. We are also going to talk about the books that I am reading, or that we are going to be reading for my free online book club, the Midnight Society Book Club, for Q3, that is July, August, and September. If you follow me in my book club online at the Midnight Society Book Club, you know already what these books are. I typically post up there first. And I also did release it in my community tab since I hadn't released it on a video yet. But if you missed both of those, this is for you, just to let you know which books to pick up in the next 3 months if you want to read along for the book club. And again, that is free. It's online. All you have to do is read the book and then meet me here on my channel at the end of the month with a couple of co-hosts who will be joining me live to discuss the book. We have non-spoiler section as well as a spoiler section. Let's get into the Midnight Society Book Club picks for July, August, and September. In July, we're going to be reading Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. Paul Tremblay is one of those authors that I don't think I've ever given one of his books a 5-star. But all of his books speak to me in an interesting way that I have read. I need to read more from this author. But I really enjoyed The Cabin at the End of the World, as well as The Pallbearers Club, A Head Full of Ghosts. I am curious if I'm going to love this one or not. I'm going to be joined for the live show in July by Gabby from Gabby Reads, as well as Ashley from Ashley's Little Library. And I've had them both on here before as guests. In fact, I've already had Ashley once this year, but honestly, like, she, I know, has this connection as well to Paul Tremblay, and I feel like Gabby kind of does too. We'll probably discuss it more in the live show. I feel like this is going to be a really good team of nerds to read this together. And since Summerween is coming up, I think I'm going to be reading this for Summerween that starts in a couple of days as of filming this. It's set in 1993, June of 1993. A group of young guerrilla filmmakers spent 4 weeks making Horror Movie a notorious, disturbing art house horror flick. The weird part is that only 3 of the film's scenes were ever released to the public, but Horror Movie has nevertheless grown a rabid fan base. 3 decades later, Hollywood is pushing for a big budget reboot. And the man who played the Thin Kid is the only surviving cast member. He remembers all too well the secrets buried within the original screenplay, the bizarre events of the filming, and the dangerous crossed lines on the set that resulted in tragedy. As memories flood back in, the boundaries between reality and film, past and present, start to blur. But he is going to help remake the film, even if it means navigating a world of cynical producers, egomaniacal directors, and surreal fan conventions. Demons of the past be damned. But at what cost? Horror Movie is an obsessive, psychologically chilling, and suspenseful feat of storytelling genius that builds inexorably to an unforgettable, mind-bending conclusion. I'm really looking forward to this, so if you, also this has sprayed edges, this copy, love this. If you're interested in July, we'll be reading this. Check out the Instagram for the date of the live show. I'll have it up there very shortly. By the time this goes up, it'll be on there. In August, for the Midnight Society Book Club, we are going to be reading a classic that I have never read yet, but I'm very, very excited to get to, and that is The Stepford Wives by Levin. I did kind of give you a sneak peek of this in one of my other videos. I think it was a vlog video, so if you watched that, you knew in advance. I love a lot of other books that are inspired by this, retellings of this, but I've never read the canon, and I'm so ashamed. So if you've not either, then join us this month in August and read The Stepford Wives by Levin. In August, my co-hosts are Meg from Reading with Meg, as well as Deja from Deja's Book World. I'm very excited to have both of these women. I think they're both outspoken, and I think this is going to be interesting. I don't think either one of them have read it yet either, so all 3 of us, this is going to be a first experience for us. And I got this copy, by the way, on Pango Books, and I love it. This is a Random House book club edition, 1972. I love it. It's so old. It's got this, one of the pictures of Levin on the back. And it's a hardcover of this short novella. This is a novella. It's 144 pages. They have just come out this year with the first ever audiobook edition of this story. I think that's part of the reason. Like, I really don't have an excuse as to why I haven't read it yet because it is so short, but having an audiobook is so helpful for me And that just came out in March. So I figured it's the perfect time to get everybody together to read this. I'm gonna listen to that and read simultaneously. I have a feeling you'll be able to find a copy of this in your library since it is an older release. Very excited to read this one in August. Let's talk about September. I don't have a copy of this one because it is not released yet, and that is called The Unmothers. It comes out on August 6th. It is by Leslie J. Anderson, and I don't know this author, but the description sold me 100%. And for this one, I'm going to be joined by Jan from Jan Agaton, as well as Sid from Sid Bookworm. Both of these women are newbies to the Midnight Society Book Club. I'm very excited to have them both on here and to get to know them both a little bit better. It's 320 pages. It says, in this emotionally raw and propulsive folk horror mystery, a journalist goes to a small town and unravels a dark secret that the women have been keeping for generations. Marshall is still trying to put the pieces together after the death of her husband, after she is involved in a terrible accident. Her editor sends her to a small backwards town of Rayford to investigate a clearly ridiculous rumor that a horse has given birth to a healthy human baby boy. When Marshall arrives in Rayford, she finds an insular town that is kinder to the horses they are famous for breeding than to their own people. But when two horribly mangled bodies are discovered in a field, one horse, one a human, she realizes that there might be a real story here. As she's pulled deeper into the town and its guarded people, her sense of reality is tipped on its head. Is she losing her grip, or is this impossible story the key to a dark secret that has haunted the women of Rayford for generations? Unbearably tense and utterly gripping, this atmospheric tale of female rage, bodily autonomy, and generational trauma hails the arrival of a masterful storyteller. Did that not just sell you? Because it sold me. Female rage, bodily autonomy, like generational trauma? Yes, please give it to me. I'm in. Is it paranormal? I don't know. I don't know if it's paranormal. It's gonna be weird either way. It's gonna be weird and it's gonna be wild, and I can't wait. So July, August, September, horror movie by Paul Tremblay. We have The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin, and then The Unmothers by Leslie J. Anderson. So that's gonna be it for the Midnight Society updates. Before we get into the actual wrap up, I do have something else that I want to mention to you momentarily, if you don't mind me taking another second of your time to just talk a little bit here about Magic Mind. This is a productivity shot that is made for creatives. It gives you energy naturally. I've been taking it for a while now. I love it. You've probably heard me talk about it before. Today, I do want to mention the ease of the subscription process for this if you're interested. My code is Wryly20. That gives you 20% off if you want to use it. But if you do a subscription to Magic Mind instead of a one-time purchase, you get an additional discount. And that can be added together with my 20% off to get you up to 48% off, which is really pretty incredible. And this stuff is like for real. This is not your like gas station off the shelf stuff. There's been a lot of care that's been put into this, and there are a lot of so many good things in here. I like to take it for clarity, for focus, to stop procrastinating, because I find that if I wake up in the morning and I'm not ready for the day, and then I take my Magic Mind and I just like sit down and relax for like 5 minutes, and then I'm just like, okay, I'm ready now. There are two options. You can get a pack of 15 or a pack of 30, and that'll come monthly. Even if you tried my trial before, you can still use my 20% discount with Wryly20. Super easy. You don't have to go to the store, and I've been doing that a lot with like cleaning products or like beauty products and things like that. I've just been putting out subscription anyway, and so this is just like another thing that I'm like, okay, great. It's already at my door. It's one less thing I have to worry about during the week or when I go to the grocery store or whatever. If you do sign up for the subscription and then you find that you don't like it, first of all, there's a 100% back guarantee with no expectation of sending back the bottles or anything from your first purchase. With the subscription, you get also free shipping. So that's another perk to getting a subscription. So I'm gonna put that link down below in the description box for y'all to check it out if you're interested at all, and let me know if you do, because I wanna hear your thoughts about it. Let's get into my books. Oh my gosh, let's finally, I'm sorry, I don't usually, if you're new here, I don't usually leave y'all hanging for this long, but we're doing it. We're getting into it. In June, I read 7 books, and most of them are good. In fact, I recommend all of them. They are all 3 stars and above. I have 1 3-star read. I have 4 3.5-star reads. That's kind of A bummer and a great thing about this wrap up is that a lot of them are kind of in the middle, where I recommend them, but I don't love them, but I think there is an audience for them, so maybe you're that audience. And then I have a 4.5 star book and a 5-star book that I want to talk to you about. Potentially 2 5-star books. Honestly, like the more I think about my 4.5 star, the more I want to move it up to potentially a 5-star. We'll see. I'll start with my lowest rated book and then work my way up to my highest rated book. But like I said before, we're gonna start with my lowest rated book. So that is my 3-star book. My 3-star book this month, unfortunately, is my book club pick for the Midnight Society book club. In June, we read Death in the Details by Tietjen. This is a debut novel and the first in a mystery series surrounding a woman named Maple. In its post-World War II historical. This isn't a typical Midnight Society book club pick, but the reason I was drawn to this was because of my obsession with Frances Glessner Lee. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know, I'm sure you've heard her name before because I talk about her all the time. She was a debutante in Chicago. She was born in the late 19th century. They call her the mother of forensics, and she made these tiny little doll houses that were scaled to size perfectly of crime scenes. And she made them specifically to help people build investigative skills on a death scene. Tietjen is also obsessed with Frances Glessner Lee, so much so that she wrote a book, a novel, and is continuing the series, I think, surrounding this woman who makes little dollhouses, and this is obviously inspired by Frances Glessner Lee. This first story, I think she drew inspiration from a specific one of FGL's dollhouse nutshells. FGL called them the Nutshell Studies of Unexplained Deaths. So in this story, we're following Maple Bishop, and she has just found out that her husband, Bill, who was a doctor, went away to the war and is not coming back. He died, and he left her penniless. She's got to figure out a way to survive. Honestly, she takes it a lot better than I would. She like grits her teeth and bears it. I would have been a puddle on the floor, but that's just me. So she decides to turn her dollhouse making into a business. But then one of her first customers ends up dead, and she ends up finding him at the scene, hanging in his barn. And in order to kind of get all of the details right, she recreates that crime scene in a dollhouse of hers. And she calls it Finding What's Big in What's Small. Also, our main character has a photographic memory, but then Maple also was talking about how she felt guilty because she was forgetting what her husband looked like, but I don't know if that's even possible if you have a photographic memory. It's just like little things. It's honestly little things. Like, I don't think that Tietjen and I read the same books. I think we have this common obsession, and this is the link between us, but I think I tend to like things a little bit darker than this. It felt like it was verging on cozy mystery or quirky main character, but didn't quite go there. It didn't quite go far enough to make that assertion or to give that vibe or that energy. Generally, I would read from this author again. It's probably not going to be super high up on my list. There were differences between the nutshell that she made and the Frances Glessner Lee one. In my mind, in my perfect world, I wanted them to be exactly identical so that the reader could use that reference of Frances Glessner Lee's nutshell while we're reading the book, but the scenes weren't exactly the same. They were a little bit different, which kind of changed the storyline. Also, in my mind, I thought this was going to end with like all of the women in this town being really interested in forensics and like doing this whole thing like Frances Glessner Lee did. There were moments where I could see nods to FGL many, many times. Like, she obviously is a fan, but this is not the type of book that I would typically read. It's a little outside of my genre. I'm not necessarily comfortable with historical fiction. It's a little bit weird. Although that being said, it didn't feel, there were only a few parts of this that made you realize that you were outside of our own time and place, because obviously there's stuff going on, but it wasn't overwhelming with like the war talk or anything like that. It was really just the circumstances that our character was put in. But yeah, I thought it was fine. 3 stars. Let's move on. You can watch that live show discussion. I'll link that above and below if you're interested in checking out a full-length discussion. There's a spoiler section as well as a non-spoiler section. And that again is with Mara, myself, and Lexi. Okay, moving on to my 3.5-star books. I have 4 of them, so there's quite a few, but these are all gonna have an audience for somebody, I feel like. The first one that I want to talk about is The Middle of the Night by Wryly Sager. I had an ALC, advanced listening copy of this one from Libro FM, so I picked it up. Of course, I was intrigued. You know, I don't always get along with Wryly Sager books, but I didn't mind this one. It does tease that paranormal thing that he loves to do, but I didn't mind the direction that this one went in. However, I still didn't think it was amazing. I did take quite a few notes. I don't know if you can even see that on there. So this is set in New Jersey in 1994. It's actually dual timeline, so 1994 and 2024. And we're following Ethan, who has just moved back into his childhood home when his parents retired to Florida, and so they left him the house. And under his current circumstances, it just made sense for him to come back and live there, even though he doesn't necessarily want to be there because he had a terrible childhood experience there in which he and his best friend were camping out in the backyard in a tent, and he woke up in the morning to find a knife cut in the tent and his friend gone. And he has been struggling with the guilt of that, survivor's guilt of that, ever since. He's got insomnia. He can't quite recall what happened that night, so he doesn't know if he's like repressed something. This one is definitely more domestic suspense, domestic thriller. It's very much suburbia. When Ethan first gets back, he starts feeling like he's being haunted by Billy. Billy also was obsessed with ghosts, and so I can see how he would draw that line subconsciously. He sees like the motion sensor lights from all of his neighbors, like it'll just like light up down the street in a row, and he's like, oh, that's Billy. He's like trying to talk to me. At the time, they had this little ragtag group of friends, and now, as Ethan is coming in contact with them since he's moved back into town, he's learning things about what happened years ago that he never knew, and it's starting to reveal things about the past that was never brought up before. This is a significant Wryly Sager because it is his first novel in which he's written a male main character. Most of his main characters, all of his other main characters, have been women in the past, so I do want to give him some credit for that. He went out on a limb to do this because he got a lot of feedback that's saying, why are you writing women? Why are you writing women? So he's like, okay, I'll write a man. And I don't see any problem with that. I think his men are just as vulnerable as his women, and I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with the way he writes either one. I do have a problem with the way he tricks the reader sometimes into thinking something's paranormal or is not, and like, I don't know, sets up the world in a way that isn't necessarily cohesive with the way the story turns out. But now I'm talking about other books by him. For this one, I liked it. I liked the way it went. It reminded me of Lock Every Door by him in a way, but more of a like chill. Like the whole vibe of this is not over the top like a lot of his books are. We're not set on the cliff of this mansion in this gothic, you know, castle. We're not at a cabin by the lake. It's not isolated. It is suburbia. So it's got suburbia energy, and it's not as high stakes and it's not as high octane as some of his other books. So I can definitely see why some people may not love this one as much, but for me, I do like this one. I enjoy this one, but it is a 3.5 star. All right, this next book that I want to talk to you about is a 3.5 star. That is Diavola by Jennifer Thorne. I read this one. This was the very last book that I read in June, and I read it super quickly. I didn't really take any notes. I just wanted to sit with it and enjoy this one without having to like overanalyze it. And I think because of that, I may have missed something, some important things at the beginning that I didn't quite sink in. So I think it could be partially my fault that this doesn't have a higher rating. But overall, I really enjoyed the writing style. I enjoyed the atmosphere in here a lot. This book is set mostly in Italy. But it's also reminding me of Wryly Sager's Home Before Dark a little bit, because it's like this haunted house, or is it? And our family is like fleeing from this house. While I thought the entire story was going to take place in this house, I was surprised to learn that actually at about like 75% they leave the house. And I'm like, what else do we have to say now? And then it continues on. So the pacing in that in-between part, not the greatest, but I like where it took it. Our main character is an artist, and she is kind of the black sheep of her family. They're obviously very well off. She's got a twin brother, Benny. She's got an older sister, Nicole. And Nicole has a husband and 2 kids. So she's got 2 little nieces running around, mom and dad. And every year they go on this family vacation. Anna's the child in this family dynamic that was the wonder child. Like, she was super smart. She was a wonderful artist. She did everything she did well. She got accepted to Harvard, but then she like messed up again and again and again, and she never finished her degree. Her family feels like she has not lived up to her potential. And so she is kind of like the black sheep, where they're like, okay, first of all, she does everything right, but also like she needs to get her life together. She doesn't have it together. So they get to this villa, and of course Anna's the only one that speaks a little bit of Italian. So her parents are really reliant on her to interpret things here. She gets some weird vibes, even just like on the way in, from like the Uber driver who's like saying some stuff about this place, and then I think the waiter at one of the restaurants says something else about this place, like, oh, don't go in the tower, there's this tower and somebody has the key and we're not supposed to go in it. Needless to say, weird things start happening in this house. Really, the interesting part about this novel is that how her family turns on Anna. It's not her fault, but they think it is. She also had some childhood behaviors that may or may not have been misconstrued and has stuck with her throughout her entire life. So when ghosty stuff starts happening, of course, Anna gets the blame, and when they finally do get out of the mansion, that is not the end of the story. More happens. It was interesting. I felt like it was a lot of details at the beginning to take in, but overall, atmospheric, gothic, if you like that kind of thing, if you like a wry sense of humor, I feel like this author definitely brought that to the story as well, and kind of like a sassy main character. So it was a good time. It was fun. 3.5 stars. Next, I want to talk about One Perfect Couple. This is by Ruth Ware. This is another one of my 3.5 star reads for this month. This came out May 21st. A lot of these this month are also new releases. I listened to this one on Audible. It's 385 pages, and I just wanted this one. I had it on hold from my library, but I just really wanted to read it because I knew it had that reality TV show thing element to it, and I was obsessed. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna pay for it. So this is really different for Ruth Ware because all of her other books have more of a gothic tone to them. And that's one thing that I think Ruth Ware is really good at, is creating that tense gothic atmosphere and making it feel like, you know, there's a rickety gate opening with magpies flying from a tree in an overcast sky somewhere in England. Like, that's the energy that Ruth Ware gives. So like, what is this? First of all, like, look at just even this cover. I'm like so confused. I don't know for me if this type of story works for her writing style, because her writing style is usually so atmospheric, but that doesn't work in this case. Also, another thing that I don't love about this is that it really reminded me of another book that I read recently called Stranded by Sarah Goodwin. Another reality TV show thriller set on a remote island. In both of them, we're following these female main characters who are just constantly being gaslit. And also in both of them, kind of the main theme turns out to be not just this reality TV show, but who are you when you think no one is watching? They both have similar, slower pacing. That's typical for a Ruth Ware book. So I've really struggled with this. I took a lot of notes on this, and there were so many thoughts that I had. I think there was one thing that was the most successful about this story, and that was the way the story is told. Of course, Ruth Ware is great when it comes to formatting a story in a way that is clever and kind of pulls one over on you, or at least keeps your interest. And what did that for me for this story was there were these interspersed chapters that were written like a diary, but you don't know from whose perspective this diary is. And as those chapters pop in, it is recalling scenes that we've already experienced through previous chapters in the novel, but it doesn't match what we thought happened. So you don't know as the reader which one's accurate, who's writing this, and if they are, like, what's their motive, like, what is going on? And that alone kept my interest throughout this. Without those interspersed chapters and that writing technique thrown in there, I don't think this would have been as good as it is, but I think with that it did add something different, although I'm still a little concerned that it's very similar to Stranded. I don't think there's any way that Ruth Ware has not read Stranded by Sarah Goodwin, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong, you never know. Anyway, we're following Lila as our main character. She's a 32-year-old in STEM, and she's a scientist. So I love that. I love that we're following a scientist in this. She's a virologist. She's got her PhD, but she's got a lot of stuff that's been going wrong with her work recently. She's got this boyfriend, Nico. He's 28, so he's 4 years younger than her, and he's like an aspiring actor, and he's deluded and thinks he's gonna be like this famous person. And anyway, he's the one that signs them up for this reality show. It's called One Perfect Couple. And it's kind of like Bachelor in Paradise, or what's that other one that I was recently watching too? I think it's called The Perfect Couple. The one with Nick Lachey or whatever. But in this one, they come on as couples, and the producers at least are hoping that they like switch up on each other. They have to like do compatibility tests and things like that, and there's some kind of cash prize at the end. Anyway, Nico is hoping that this is his big break, that this is going to shoot him into superstardom. And because Lila, like, her grant didn't go through or something with the research that she's doing, she was able to take the time off and said, okay, I'll do this. So she's kind of like a duck out of water in this whole story. There's this bad storm, and we know at the beginning that a storm is going to to come, because we're also getting interspersed chapters where they are calling for help. They're calling for SOS, and they're like, oh, we've lost power, people are injured, and come to find out that somebody on this island is a killer, people start dying. So the stakes are high, obviously. Of course, there are other couples that come on this as well. I think it's 5 couples total and 10 people. So there's drama. We find out their secrets that they're hiding. We find out their intentions on this show. It's interesting and well written, but again, I don't know. Maybe it's just that I'm like thrown into this, but I just don't connect Ruth Ware's writing style with this kind of book, but I understand and respect why she would write it, because that's trending right now. So that could just be a me thing. I do think there are some people who would really like this. I know Ashley, I just watched her wrap up and she gave this 5 stars. So from Ashley's Little Library. You may love this one too, I don't know. Ashley and I, our tastes flip-flop all the time, and a lot of times they align and sometimes they don't, but they're not so far off on this one. I would still recommend this. Do I think it's Ruth Ware's best book? No, I don't. My last 3.5 star book is called The Echo Wife. This is by Sarah Gailey. She also wrote Just Like Home, which was a haunted house story that came out a year or 2 ago, and I really liked that. I really enjoyed this author's writing style, and I cannot wait to read more from this author. Even though I gave this 3.5 stars, like there's something really special in her writing. Something really special that it's like this intangible thing that she does so well. She makes us empathize, and she tests our loyalties with these characters. This one came out in 2021, so it's relatively new still. And we're following this woman, Evelyn. She runs a business where she can clone people and use them for body parts. We're not just following Evelyn though, we're following Martine, who is Evelyn's clone. She is a genetically cloned replica made from Evelyn Caldwell's award-winning research. She's patient and she's gentle and obedient. So Evelyn herself, she is kind of a bitch. She is forceful, she's assertive, she says what she means what she says, but Martine is purposefully made to be subservient. She's everything Evelyn swore she'd never be, and she's having an affair with Evelyn's husband. The crux of this story is that Evelyn's husband dies, and she has to work together with her clone in order to clean up this mess, literally and figuratively. So this one is like a science fiction thriller, I would say. So Nathan, first of all, the husband, total asshole. Like, he just gets worse and worse throughout the book. But for some reason, because I've been watching the show Upload, if you've been keeping up with that, I think it's on Apple TV or Amazon Prime, one of the two. The actor on that, Robbie Amell, plays a character named Nathan, and so for some reason I associated him with Nathan the entire time. That was the only person I could picture while I was reading this. Oh, the audiobook is narrated by X.E. Sands, who I love. She is one of my favorite audio narrators. She does such a great job every single time. She brings so much emotion to her characters' voices, and I love listening to her audiobooks. The reason it got 3.5 stars is because I felt like I loved the concept of this. I love the ideas. I love the way Sarah Gailey's mind works, but I felt like it was lacking a little bit in execution. There were some things about our main character that really piqued my interest, but never got like touched on again. There was a moment where I don't want to give away any spoilers, but Evelyn is doing something in the lab where she's working with these clones who are essentially humans, and that's the whole thing. Like, are they human? Are they not human? But the way she's handling these is like they are specimens and not necessarily humans, and I wanted her to delve deeper into that like disturbing quality of like that point of view, but she did not. So I was a little disappointed in that, but there were moments where I thought she was going to take it a certain place, and I was like, this is going to be dark, but it didn't quite go there. I still love how it ended up. I still had a really good time reading this. Yeah, it just didn't feel fully realized to me. And I also would have enjoyed a little bit more world building in this, because that is just like a huge concept to be like, hey, now we are capable of having businesses where we manufacture clones so that people can have body parts if they need them, if they need a heart, a lung, whatever. That's a big leap. That would definitely change a lot about society, and I would have liked to know more about how that affected the world around them. But some of her writing is so stinking good. There was a line about something about a listless scab. It was comparing something to a scab that was just like listlessly hanging off, and I was like, oh my god, like it has nothing to do with the plot or any, like the story didn't need that, but it added to it for me because the writing was just so good. I really like this author. If you're looking for a sci-fi thriller, this one I would definitely recommend. I liked it a lot, and I'm really excited to read more from this author, like I said. Now we get to move on to my 4.5-star book. I'm so excited to talk to you about this one, and that is Missing White Woman by Kellye Garrett. I've never read from this author before, but I guess she has several other books, so I need to get reading this author because I am very impressed by this story. This is a fun, fast-paced crime thriller, but what makes it interesting is that it's interrogating this missing white woman syndrome, because we're following a black female protagonist named Bree. She finds herself in a situation that is not her fault, but because she has other secrets in her past, she gets kind of worked into this situation that she has nothing to do with. She's not involved in. It's a set in New York, which is another awesome thing about this. It very much gives New York vibes the whole time you're reading it, so if you're looking for that, this is it as well. And we're following Bree, and everything keeps going wrong for Bree. Like, you just feel for this woman so much coming into this story because like shit just goes wrong for her over and over again, and she's finally found this guy that she thinks is the one. Like, he treats her right. He's paid for this trip to New York. He's, you know, got all of this stuff going on, but he is kind of a workaholic, and he has to take care of some stuff on their vacation too, so their plans get a little bit disrupted, but she really likes this guy. And then one morning she wakes up and he's gone, and there's a dead white woman in their Airbnb. And it turns out that this dead white woman is potentially this missing white woman that everyone's been talking about for the last couple of weeks, Janelle. So there's also this other element of this where we have a social media influencer from TikTok, A Brush with Billy. She was a makeup and beauty content creator on TikTok, and one of her subscribers or followers is Janelle Beckett, who is the person who went missing. So she takes it upon herself to use her clout and her popularity to try to find clues and stuff and figure out, where is Janelle Beckett? Is she okay? Billy could potentially cause more harm than good, depending on what facts she chooses to run with and pass on. So we're also talking about the dangers of like social media and misinformation. I loved that extra layer of social commentary within this, and I thought it was so good. I also felt like, especially the ending scene, there's a moment in the subway. I'm not gonna say anything. No, I'm not gonna say it. There's a moment anyway that felt so cinematic. Like it was a movie, and it just instantly reminded me of Gone Girl. It's not the same twist or anything like that, but it does kind of play with that duplicity and making you feel like when the story wraps up, there's something that's being left unsaid. Like there's more to the story, but it's not a cliffhanger, but it's just like a little, I like this. It's, I'm not even gonna lie, it's the next day. I was gonna try to pretend it wasn't and wear the same clothes, do my makeup the same, but I moved my plant yesterday. There's too much to take into account for continuity, so it's the next morning. And I have a wonderful, beautiful coffee, and I'm ready to continue this with you. So we're talking about Missing White Woman and how cinematic that last scene was. And so I looked up this author, Kellye Garrett, and I found out that she spent 8 years working in Hollywood, including a stint writing for the CBS drama Cold Case. She was also a former magazine editor. She has a BS in magazine writing from Florida A&M and an MFA in screenwriting from USC's famed film school. That makes total sense that this reads like a film, like a movie, and I want to see this adapted. I think this could be really, really great as a film adaptation. I mean, of course, I would like a 7 or 8 episode miniseries, personally. But that's just me. I'll take what I can get. I'll take a movie. I'll take a movie too. One thing I want to mention that Brianna talks about a lot in this story is the optics of like how a situation looks being a person of color versus a white person. And she has this kind of attitude that she adopts when she's in a situation where she could be in danger simply because of the color of her skin. She has this kind of persona that she puts on that she calls Peppy Black Girl. This non-threatening, happy-go-lucky, upbeat personality that she uses as a weapon, almost as a tool to get through life. And it's a really interesting perspective that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And it gives me perspective as a white person. So really interesting. I loved this for that, but I also loved it for the story. Characters are really well done, well thought out. It's just, I think it's great. And you know what? I am going to give this a 5-star. I'm switching it right now. Let's do it. I have the power. I'm going to wield it. Yeah, this is going to be a 5-star. Rate it. Read this one. I got it on Libby from my library. Let's move on to my 5-star book and the last book of this wrap up. And I actually own this one. I got this awesome paperback inspired by Kellye of The Silence of the Lambs. I got this amazing paperback copy on Pango Books for like $4. Like what even? What even? This thing is so cool. Anyway, I've seen this movie, and it's funny that we brought up Gone Girl in the last book because I want to talk about Gone Girl in context with this book as well, because this is also one that I had seen the movie of and never read the book. And I didn't pick it up specifically because this is not the first book in the series. So The Silence of the Lambs is actually book 2 in this series. It's the Hannibal Lecter series, and book 1 is Red Dragon. I have been putting off reading this one because I wanted to read Red Dragon first, but then you know what? I thought, I want to read this book. I've wanted to read it for so long. I'm putting myself in this box. Like I'm putting myself in the box. So I was just like, you know what? Get out, read it. I want to read it. I have it. Let's do it. I got the audiobook too. I got the like 30th anniversary audiobook, 25th anniversary, but this audio was recorded in 2013, and I will say, just for the sake of reviewing the quality of the audio, you can tell that it's 10 years old. There's this like gray noise or some color of noise in the background behind the narrator that kind of bothered me a little bit. Was definitely noticeable, but the audio narrator was Frank Muller, who has since passed away, but did an excellent job on this as well. And you can tell that this came out after the movie and that he was inspired by Jodie Foster's rendition of Clarice Starling and by Anthony Hopkins' rendition of Hannibal Lecter, because that inflection came through in the audio narration. It was so good, y'all. I got a little off subject, but when I was talking about my comparison to Gone Girl with this, I watched both of these movies first, like I said, and then experienced the book. And for both of them, I had a similar experience in that I enjoyed the book just as much as I thought I would and more. The movie follows the book very closely, down to even a lot of the dialogue. I felt like I was watching the movie, but with like the editor's cut. Like I was getting extra scenes, I was getting more juicy background information that helped me understand the motives of the characters and all of that. Like it was such a good reading experience, and I'm definitely gonna go back and read Red Dragon now that I don't have that like pressure of having to read it just so I can read something else. I want to read it now. Thomas Harris is a great writer. He also does have commentary in here about Clarice being in the FBI and how she is affected as a woman, and that comes through in the movie adaptation, the film adaptation as well. A serial murderer known as Buffalo Bill is stalking particular women. He has a purpose, but no one can fathom it, for the bodies are discovered in different states. Clarice Starling, a young trainee at the FBI Academy, is surprised to be summoned by Jack Crawford, chief of the Bureau's Behavioral Science Section. Her assignment to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist, and a grisly killer now kept under close watch in the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane. Lecter's insight into the minds of murderers could help track and capture Buffalo Bill. Smart and attractive, Starling is shaken to find herself in a strange, intense relationship with the acutely perceptive Lecter. His cryptic clues about Buffalo Bill and about her launch Clarice into a search that every reader will find startling, harrowing, and totally compelling. There could be some fat phobia in here, so if that's something that is hard for you to read, then obviously don't read this. Everything that's great about the movie, essentially, is great about this book too. We get into that darkness of the killer's mind through Hannibal Lecter, and he's so clever and witty, a monster. And Clarice is the perfect heroine because she is strong and she is focused and determined. She has something to prove. It's just great. It's a great story. Silence of the Lambs. I haven't been holding this up. Oh my goodness. Silence of the Lambs, 5 stars. Absolutely. Loved this. Cannot wait to read more in this series. that's it. It is, like I said, it's the next morning and it's now time for me to take my Magic Mind. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Please let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book was that you read in June. Also, if you're planning on joining us for the Midnight Society Book Club for any of these books that I have upcoming. Cheers. Also, don't forget to use my code Wryly20 for 20% off Magic Mind. The link again is down below. And don't forget, you can stack that if you do the subscription and get up to 48% off. So use it or don't, but it's here for you if you want. And I will talk to y'all soon. Don't forget that life is short, so read Wryly. Cheers and goodbye!